The tourism sector is one of the largest industries in the world. In Kenya, tourism rakes in about 163 billion shillings in earnings, making it the third largest foreign exchange earner behind the export of tea and horticulture. But in March 2020, things took a turn for the worst when the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic shook the tourism sector, bringing it to its knees.
The tourism industry basically died, and with the closing of airspaces and the lockdown of different continents and countries around the world, it meant that tourism as an industry went on hold.
In a nutshell, where are we today? To be honest with you, looking at you in the eye, we are living by the day. You don't know what will happen tomorrow.
This industry has been severely affected by Covid-19, especially here in Mombasa, where the county was among the two major hotspots in the country in terms of the pandemic. You remember at the beginning, at the advent of the pandemic, the hotel industry particularly was significantly affected, and some were actually forced to close down, and others had to literally downscale their operations.
The coast region stands out for its diverse products in the tourism sector, comprising of beach destinations and safaris in both Savo East and Savo West game reserves. These are the mainstay of the region's economy. But when the pandemic struck, many hotels in the region took a direct hit. They are on the verge of collapsing. Due to financial constraints, hundreds of people have also lost their jobs in the country. According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, as many as 100 million direct tourism jobs are at risk. The industries associated with the sector, such as food services, which provides employment for over 100 million workers worldwide, are also vulnerable. Here in Kenya, according to data from the Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife, 2.5 million people who were in employment in the sector by 2019, 80% of them have now been affected by coronavirus.
Mwezi wa 3 mwaka jana tulipoteza kazi kuhusu hiyo Covid-19 kwa sababu hata ni situation hatukuwa tunajua. Kuingia kama siku moja tu tukaambiwa ghafla hoteli imefungwa mpaka siku haijulikani kufuatana na hii mambo ya Covid-19. Sasa bila malipo, tulienda bila malipo yote. Mtu una watoto wako shule, unataka kulipa school fees kwa pesa yenye utapata, vile hata upate hiyo changamoto za kulipa nyumba, kujisaidia kula, ikawa ni tabu sasa.
Agneta used to work as a cleaner and a room attendant at a hotel in Mombasa, and she says that all her colleagues were sent home when the management decided to shut down the facility.
Statistics wise, we have close to about 3,750 members that we lost jobs in Mombasa. I'm talking about direct linked to us. We are not talking about other sectors, other areas that are dependent to tourism. We are talking about our members. Those are our members that we've lost. And we also have a number of employees on unpaid leaves. We also still have a number of employees on rotation basis, working on rotation shifts, like a 14-day rotation or 1-month rotation. Then you leave a job, somebody else comes, takes over. We also have a number of employees on pay cuts.
The effect of COVID-19 crisis also crippled the international market. WTO says international tourism is expected to decline drastically. According to the World Tourism Barometer, international tourist arrivals fell by 72% between January and October 2020, precipitated by COVID-19 restrictions. The decline represents over 900 million fewer international tourist arrivals worldwide compared to the same period in 2019, and translates to a loss of more than $935 billion in export revenues.
Bila kazi ni kugumu sana kwa mtu ambao yani unatafuta leo ndio upate vile utapeleka maisha yako, ni vigumu sana. Nikipata kufulia mtu nguo na nafanya, tupata hata kwenda kazi za vibandani huku kusaidia watu, hiyo ndio kazi nafanya sasa hivi.
Utalii ni mbaya kwa sababu ya corona. Haieleweki kabisa kwa sababu kazi yenye ilikuwa mbeleni sio kama saa haieleweki kabisa. Sasa hii corona bana imetuharibia mambo mengi, shughuli mengi kwa kazi.
This is where I urge the government and His Excellency and Honorable Najib Balala, this is the time where we need to sit the government and the policymakers need to sit with the stakeholders within the country so that we can sit and brainstorm together in terms of what needs to be done to be able to pick up international business tourism. There's the regional tourism, and then there's the local tourism.
We know government is trying to get a foolproof system so that all the monies that are paid comes to the government. But don't make the system so difficult that you actually lose the bigger picture and a client end up missing out coming to Kenya. What happens is that they'll simply avoid us and they'll go to other destinations. So in the visa aspect, we can make it easier. We still support and we want, and we are the ones who pushed for e-visa. But we must get a platform that is working. Currently, it is 50% you can say, and sometimes it's not working, and that becomes a big challenge. Now, what we are saying is, if you have paid for it, please just allow the person to board. Stop stopping them at the source, because when you do that, you are really disrupting somebody's travel, and yet they've made the effort actually to apply online. They even paid for it.
In reality, people will not want to be away on holiday, say for 2 or 3 weeks, and then come back and have to quarantine for another 2 weeks. People don't necessarily have that luxury, and yet unless they're in their later years and are probably self-employed or retired, and therefore then that makes sense. So those are some of the things that we need to sort of negotiate as countries, as partners, to be able to say that if we are to really get into an understanding of how we revive the industry, these are some of the aspects that we need to put in place in terms of considering what concessions can we have.
The pandemic is with us and it's real. Still, countries have locked down, some of them, and you've seen how Europe has happened. Also, the conditionality of having a PCR and the issues of quarantine, that is also making travel not to happen as much as it should be. Despite since August we have opened our airspace, but there is fear from the travelers, and also they prefer to travel locally. As you can see, that even in Kenya, people are traveling just within the country. They're not traveling overseas because, again, the dangers and the fear factor. But yes, I'm optimistic. The vaccine has brought hope, but it will take time till it's covered the whole world.
The Kenya Tourism Federation reveals that there are negotiations going on between stakeholders in the sector to rally the government to issue charter incentives so as to attract low-cost carriers to bring visitors to the coastal region. Some of the potential markets being looked at now include Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and even Russia.
Mombasa, unfortunately, still has a bit of protected skies where we have our national carrier, where we are not allowing others, to fly in freely with a higher, freedom rights to come to Mombasa. I'll give you a simple example. Rwanda Airlines, for instance, would like to fly Kigali, Mombasa, Mumbai, and then Mumbai, Mombasa, Kigali, the way they used to do Kigali, Mombasa, Dubai. But our government will certainly not allow that. But again, we are asking ourselves, if you're not serving that route, why will you deny somebody else to serve that route and in the process help us to fill our beds? Because there's no quarrel with success at the end of the day. It really doesn't matter who brought the numbers here. When you look around, the number of beds or rooms we're looking at, we're not looking at anything less than 40,000 beds.
Local tourism was at its best during the December holidays, as most of the hotels in the region recorded good numbers. The Ministry of Health, however, put in place COVID-19 restrictions in hotels and restaurants that saw a restricted number of guests occupying the facilities.
Before the president's speech on lockdown, our focus was very low. But after the president gave a leeway for families to travel, but again observe COVID protocols, then our bookings started triggering in.
The international tourism's been negligible because obviously with the various problems of quarantining on return, people are not that keen to travel. We're seeing more and more Kenya tourists coming to the coast. Our difficulty at the moment is they don't like to come to a place where they can only drink in their rooms, but we're battling that at the moment, and let's hope once as we prove that we've got all our protocols in place and followed the Ministry of Health guidelines, that we are more than responsible for our clients, and we can start serving drinks and get back to the situation as normal.
Since the international tourists stopped coming, we are receiving many locals.
The tour companies are giving a good rate. This is the opportunity for Kenyans to come out and enjoy Kenya. I know COVID has been hard on people, but we have been here one full day, received extreme rest, been able to experience Kenya at its best. The animals seem to have rested since we have been in COVID, and they are out everywhere. We recommend Kenya's local tourists come out, come and see what is out here.
We are one of the luckiest people, Kenyans, because we have everything in our backyard. We have everything that you would possibly want from an experiential travel in this country. You've got the most beautiful beaches, you've got the most amazing safari destinations, and you've got a wonderful capital city which has a national park in it. What else can one ask for?
Kenya is a destination which has got a very wide species of birds. Over 400 can be spotted in places like Baringo, in places like Naivasha, name it. You see so many types of bird species, and that is one thing that can easily attract some of these visitors. But having said that, there are many other things that we can do differently. When you look at the African market, what will attract a Nigerian to come to Kenya may not be wildlife. They are more interested with nightlife, good restaurants, good experience, shopping. And let's face it, in a place like Nairobi, we have got fairly decent shopping standards. So there's no reason why Nairobi cannot attract some of the neighboring countries instead of them going to Dubai and the rest of the places. But we just need to make sure also that the prices that prevail in some of our stores are reasonable, because sometimes we want to make a killing and we assume that some of these guys are completely market ignorant. These are people who travel. They know the prices of these things, whether it is in London, whether it is in Dubai. So don't try to be too smart, because these people have worked for their money and they know how to spend it.
Crocodiles. People who are just obstructing them.
At the Masai Mara Game Reserve, all is not well. Families which depend on the establishment are reeling from the pangs of COVID-19. The Ministry of Tourism estimates that in 2020, about 2 million tourists visited Kenya, some of whom went straight to the Mara to experience the spectacle eighth wonder of the world. But when restriction on movements was escalated by government, the Masai Mara remained deserted. The county government of Narok lost over 2 billion shillings in revenue. The Kenya Wildlife Service also lost over 500 million shillings of collections from game park fees during the same period. The COVID testing, the PCR testing, doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. So for now, if you have international guests who are coming into the country, the validity of the PCR tests needs to be extended from 3 days to at least 4 to 5 days. Because, for example, you have guests who are coming from as far as the United States, if in case of any delayed flights or long transit periods, their PCR tests are no longer valid.
It will be a different type of tourism after COVID-19. It's post-COVID. What will happen? The client will change in terms of behavioral and demand, and definitely we, the industry, need to transform. because it's about health as number one. Number two is about technology. It's about experience. And the product must be what the new clientele has. I've said today that the clientele of 2021 would not be the same clientele desires of 2019.
When the government relaxed COVID-19 protocols and opened the airspace in August 2020, it signified a new dawn for the industry after receiving a boost from the domestic market.
I'm the manager at Hemingway's Watamu. We've just experienced one of our whale watching trips today. The humpback migration comes through across the coast of East Africa every year in July, August and September, which is one of the low seasons here. It's actually winter on the coast, and it's not normally a very busy time. But because of the whales offering something that's completely unique and very unusual, we've got guests coming here and providing an income to the local market and to the local people at a time when we wouldn't normally be busy. So it's a really wonderful, new and unique draw to bring people to an area at a normally quiet time.
When you see it, you see how huge this animal is, because it's 40 tons, and the baby, just a newly born baby, is 1 ton. So you could imagine the size.
We're seeing two different types of markets. So we're seeing the traditional domestic market sector that want a beach holiday over Christmas, right? So they want to take their families and take them to Mombasa. Then we're seeing another audience, a much younger audience that is embracing safari. So they were the first to go and visit the migration to make sure that they had booked an opportunity to see the migration whilst it was there. Then we've got a completely new group of people who are like adventure seekers. So now we've begun to see groups, smaller groups of travelers coming together to explore experiences that people haven't hitherto considered as something that they can do. So we're seeing a lot of people wanting to go to northern Kenya. They do road trips to northern Kenya, and they're opening up that circuit and discovering it and actually putting it to the fore as they share that content with their friends. So we're finding there's that sector. Then there's people who are saying, okay, I've never gone to the lake region. I want to go to the lake region. And they're discovering different things there. When you go to the lake region, you discover heritage, you discover nightlife, you discover the culture in that area, you discover gastronomy, because people are beginning to see different counties, so to speak, or different areas for offering different things. We then have the North Rift. And in the North Rift, there's very many things that are coming up.
To cushion the industry players from financial losses, the government introduced a stimulus package to provide soft loans for the refurbishments of the tourism facilities through the Tourism Finance Corporation. 1 billion shillings was set aside for 5,500 wildlife scouts under the Kenya Wildlife Service and another 1 billion shillings for conservancies in the country.
In addition to this, funding will also be set aside to support the operations of our premier hospitality institution, which is Utalii College, to guarantee the steady supply of well-trained hospitality professionals.
The coast region had a lot of challenges, and a lot of the applications had a lot of missing documents and the rest, and also a lot of disqualifications.
The United Nations World Tourism Organization Confidence Index on recovery remains at record lows. Most of the experts expect an uptick in the international tourism by 2022 or even beyond.
Recovery, even by world standards, they are talking about 2022, 2023. And then we have our own special case in Kenya, which is elections. Already we are in a very serious electioneering mood with the referendum talk and many other things. So basically it means excess baggage for us. You know, it's like you're running and you've got some 10 kilos of COVID on you, then there's another 10 kilos of visa challenges, then somebody brings some 20 kilos of referendum on you, then there is another 20. You'll become heavier as you know, as you move. Other destinations don't have those challenges.
Tourism stakeholders need to actually come together and basically re-engineer all the products that we are currently offering, especially to the local tourists, in the sense that now we may need to come up with specific or special packages that will actually attract the domestic market to explore the different tourist destinations we have in the country. And it's not rocket science, it's basically the rule of demand. The minute you lower the prices, you make them affordable.
The experts also blame travel restrictions as the main hindrance for the recovery of the international tourism, at the same time expressing optimism that the domestic market in many countries will recover faster. The rollout of COVID-19 vaccines is expected to normalize travel in 2021, which might slightly return the international travel, especially from the worst-hit areas such as Europe. So, what lies ahead for Kenya's tourism sector in the new norm? With 63% of international arrivals being attributed to leisure purposes, Kenya still has its work cut out if it is so to pivot itself as a hub for meetings, incentives, conferences and exhibition. How will domestic market repackage itself for long-term viability from a price point perspective if it is to provide a balancing wheel for the international tourism? The impact of COVID-19 on tourism places further pressure on heritage conservation as well as on the cultural and social fabric of many communities across the country. According to WTO, 90% of museums have closed and 13% may never reopen thanks to COVID-19. Players in the industry are hopeful that the government will heed to their call by ensuring a sober implementation of policies and strategies that will lead to a speedy recovery of the industry. Kevin Mutai, NTV in Mombasa.